Hey world, what's going on? This is the Political Brown Kid here, back again. Now I know we've been spending some time talking about relationships, dating, life, women in dating, men in dating. But I got to get back on topic because you know what? Life moves on. There's other things involved in life than just relationships or male-female relationships. And what I want to talk about is a topic I've been pushing off for a long time now, but I want to talk about it because I just had a conversation about it just today. And the conversation really is involved in um, student loan forgiveness, and it's a lot of people, man, that they don't understand why I'm so against student loan forgiveness. And the bottom line too is when I look at the people that I interact with, and particularly I know their background. I know their background. And when I say I know their background, I'm saying these are poor people, should I say, or people who are doing bad, struggling. Some of these people actually make good money that I know. They just are bad financially. They're bad with managing their money. They make very good livings, but bad with making money. And they're always liberal. They're always strong Democrats. And they just are so adamant about student loan forgiveness and wanting their student loans forgiven. I am, now I'll say this, and I'll go into detail later. There's only a few exceptions that I'm for student loan forgiveness. Only a few exceptions. Because I think those people do provide a public service. And I'm going to kind of go into a little bit of detail of it, but I'm not too much because I don't even have the details flushed out. But here's why I'm against student loan forgiveness. Number one, these people always want to make the argument that, everybody benefits in society when people's student loans are forgiven. And then they get mad at me because they're like, well, you don't understand that you have a dog in that fight. And I'm like, I don't have a dog in that fight because my parents, back in the day when I went to school, number one, schools did not cost this amount of money. Schools were I'm not going to say very cheap, but my parents were middle class people, middle class blue collar people, but they were able to afford tuition for me and my siblings. Got multiple siblings, and they paid for all of us to go to college. And so they were able to do that. When I came along, I had at least enough education from my father, and just because of my mindset, because that's where I go, when I came along and came up and got married and had kids, I established financial accounts that were geared towards education for my kids. And I saved in those accounts since they were little kids. And even still today, it's probably not even enough money. It's somewhat enough, but at least it lessens what we owe. But you have a bunch of people who did not prepare. It's always the people who did not prepare. And I shouldn't say always. So let me take that back because that's an absolute. It's a lot of times the people who did not prepare in life and then also you didn't prepare, and then you're also faced with hard times, hard consequences, or bills that you don't want, that want something for free. And you have to understand that people who came before you paid their bills. They didn't get their bills written off. And you have to understand too, there are a bunch of people out here who make $100,000, and people will sit up here and say, well, you make good money. $100,000 isn't anything in America. If you think $200,000 in America, $200,000 a year salary or income in America is living good, you're wrong. You are flat wrong. It's that money goes no, especially if you live in places like San Francisco, DC, Chicago, New York City, Hawaii, Seattle, Washington. We could just start naming them. That money is nothing. It is nothing. So don't beat up on $200,000 people, the people who make that type of money, because they're not quote unquote rich, even though society and the federal government treats them like they're rich. Go make $100,000 and apply for a student loan. And the student loan's going to tell you, we're not giving you any money. They may give you $5,000, $3,000, $2,000. But people who don't make that much, they get all kind of student loan money. But the point, I'm digressing a little bit to tie this in, is this. You assume the loan. And people, in the argument that the individual that I talked with today was like, well, people told them that the education is the future and the key to life. That's not my problem. The problem is, just because somebody tells you to get an education, and I agree, society has sold people on getting, and particularly Democrats have sold people on, or people who lean Democrats. They may not necessarily be Democrat politicians. They're probably just Democratic people who always want to spout off education is the key. And education somewhat is the key, but the most key is, if you control your own destiny and you open up your own business, or you have a friend that's willing to hire you, because if you look at it, Zuckerberg doesn't have a degree. Bill Gates doesn't have a degree. Sean Puffy Combs doesn't have a degree. I could go down the list. Nasir Jones, he owns an investment company. He doesn't have a degree. You can go down the list of a lot of individuals that don't have degrees, who figured it out. They understood what I want to be in life. But the difference between, and I don't know if Russell Simmons has a degree, but I know he started his record label in college. But the point that I'm making is this. When you look at those individuals, they will hire whomever can do the job. And that's the problem, that when you look at minorities in this situation, the problem with minorities is you'll have a person like Oprah Winfrey, and I'm not a fan of her at all. Oprah Winfrey will do the same thing that Russell Simmons did. First thing they'll do is hire a non-black person as their CEO to run their business. And they'll put their whole executive management staff, or the majority of their executive staff, as non-blacks. When you look at Zuckerberg and them, the first thing they do is say, I have a pipeline into Stanford University. So those are the people that I'm hiring. You don't see black people open up firms and say, I have a pipeline into Howard University, Hampton University, Grambling State, Norfolk State, Delaware State. They don't have pipelines for their business to black institutions. And they just don't do it. Because they go along with society and say, I need somebody from Harvard or Yale. I need somebody from here. Or some people hire their friends, but it's about connections. You don't necessarily need a degree if you know the right people. And so society has failed people. And I agree that sometimes you do just have to get the degree, because sometimes you have to pay the toll to cross the bridge. But that also means that you have to assume the loan, that you have to pay the loan that you assumed. And the example that I give is this. This is the problem that I have with student loan forgiveness. Student loan forgiveness does not correct the problem. It does not address the issue. The issue is high tuition at universities. That's the issue. And the example that I gave today, talking to the individual that I was talking to, is this. If you own real estate, if I own 20 rental properties, and we own the neighborhood, and I own 20 rental properties, and then he owned 20 rental properties, and this was a neighborhood of rental properties. There's 100 properties in this neighborhood. I own 20, the other person owns 20, and then 3 other people own 20 to make 100 rental properties. If we're all charging $2,000 a month for rent, and we all have tenants, and we're all 100% occupied, and the government comes in and says, we're going to pay all of your tenants' bills for all 100 of your tenants. We're going to cover all of their monthly rent. We're going to pay it because we're doing rent forgiveness. Rent forgiveness, we're paying all the tenants' rent. And I'm going to say, $2,000 times 12, that's $24,000 a year that I'm going to be making, and I own 20 of these rental property. I'm swimming in cash. Oh my God. And then if I see that somebody else raised their rent, because somebody else is going to say, well, if the government's covering their rent, hell, I'm going to take this rent up from $2,000 a month to $2,500 a month. And I'm going to see if the government will pay for it. And if the government pays for it, and if I see that he's getting $2,500 a month, and why should I keep my properties at $2,000 a month? I want more money too. I'm going to raise my prices. And then so forth and so the prices are just going to continually rise, because We know that the government pays their bills on time. First of the month. That's what one thing, good thing about being a consultant with the federal government. They're going to pay their invoices on time. You're going to get that check. That's why people have Section 8 houses. The government's going to cut that check on time. But if they're doing government debt forgiveness, you're going to continually raise your rents because the government's paying for it. So it's the same with the school system. The debt forgiveness, the schools aren't forgiving the debt. This money just isn't being written off and it just magically goes away and the debt just goes away. The government is paying whatever institution these kids are going to write off the debt. And then that write-off is being passed off to the taxpayer to pay for the debt that they forgave to cover those students. So why should I have to pay for some student's debt that I don't even know? I'm paying for my own kid's debt. That's what people are missing. And then I'm talking to this one individual, and the thing that this individual was talking to me about, before we got into this conversation, this individual was telling me about how their kid messed up the money in their particular school that they were at. They sent their kid to this particular trade school to get an IT certification, and their kid flunked out of the program. So now they're like, we're teaching the kid a lesson to make him now pay for his own bills because their kid didn't handle their business. And so I said the same thing. Well, my thing is this is the problem that I have with America too. America's always willing to say, well, like some states, like the state of Maryland, and I think the state of New York, I think those are two states. It's always a liberal state. They always want to say, well, we want to have a pre-K. We want to start a K-3, a private daycare, a free daycare for parents, and they want the taxpayers to fund it. And I'm thinking to myself, well, when my kids were young, I paid my daycare bill. It was $500 a month, probably more than that. And I paid it myself. And I get it that some people don't have this type of money. I get that. But why should I, as a taxpayer, have to pay for somebody else's kid to go to a pre-K? And all of these states want to implement these bills to say, we want to have publicly funded pre-Ks and the taxpayers are going to pay the bill. And here's the thing. You have a lot of these parents, and I'm going to get back to the story of my friend, so let me get back into that. Let me actually get back into that. He doesn't want to pay for his son to teach his son a lesson about screwing up money, but yet he's willing to have debt forgiveness and contribute taxes to pay for debt forgiveness program for some other kids who accumulated debt. And so I said this, and where I was going with that other story about the pre-K is this. The problem that I have with Americans is they're willing to pay for everything else but the people they know. The people they know and love, or the people they know and hate. So what I mean by that is this. They'll have a trifling uncle. They have an uncle. They know this uncle's trifling. He's bad with money. He's belligerent. He's ignorant. He'll go and take the money. He always got some business scheme. He's not good at doing anything. They know this uncle, and they'll say, I'm not giving him any money because Uncle so-and-so is just going to screw it up. Or Uncle so-and-so is not responsible. But yet, if you tell them to pay for some other person's debt that they don't even know, they'll be willing to say, yeah, I'm willing to pay for that debt forgiveness. They don't know if these kids are finishing these colleges. They don't know if these kids are going to go out into the world and become somebody or not, whether they're going to utilize their degree or not. They don't know. They don't even know these kids that they want the debt to be forgiven for. But yet they know their own son, they know their own uncle, they know their own friends, won't lend their friends money, won't pay for their kids' educations, but is willing to forgive the debts of other people they don't know. And that is, to me, that is the big problem. Why can't we take care of our own? I know how trifling or not trifling my kids are, or my nephews are, or my cousins are. If I choose to give them money and help them out, that's what we should be doing. But I don't want to be contributing to people that I don't know. That's my biggest problem. And it's also people don't want to acknowledge the fact that you just can't keep writing people's debts off. Now there's an article that just came out that said people are now saying that if they resume debt forgiveness, they're not going to pay their bills because everybody's saying, hey, well, so-and-so got their debt forgiven. Why can't I get mine? Listen, it's unfortunate that people forgave these debts. But again, let me get back to my story too, because I am kind of being scatterbrained and I do apologize for that. When I use the example of owning rental properties, if the government continues to pay for those debts, we're just going to continue to raise rents, right? As long as I'm getting free money, I'm going to continue to milk this system. But if the government says if the government says this, well, this is what we're going to do as a government agency. We're going to take these old abandoned buildings right here, or we're going to take the public housing. If you come live in our public houses, then your bills will, instead of paying $2,000 a month, the public housing rent is only $500 a month or $1,000 a month. If you start seeing your tenants leaving and you having a vacancy rate, then what's going to happen is you're going to say, oh my God, we need to lower our costs because the market is demanding. Because again, a lot of people don't read Wealth of Nations. A lot of people don't understand economics. If your tenants start fleeing to other places that have, similar amenities, comparables to your property, and the rents are cheaper, you're going to have to lower your rent. And so I'm saying that the same about the schools. If the schools just keep getting their debts forgiven and the schools are getting paid directly from the universities that they're just covering these kids' student loan debts, what incentivizes Harvard, Yale, Hampton? Hampton costs a lot of money. Norfolk State costs a lot of money. Delaware State, or even University of North Carolina, Duke University. You could start naming any and every university in America. What incentivizes these universities to lower their tuition if the government is just going to pay off everyone's debt or most people's debts? It does nothing. But I will say this, Bernie Sanders had a great approach. Bernie Sanders was like, all of the state-funded schools should be free or low cost. I think he said, I don't know if he mentioned low cost. I'm going to throw in the word low cost. If you take all of the state universities and make them low cost or no cost universities because it's tied up into your state taxes that you pay. And so if you go to your in-state university, you go there for free or for virtually free. If you start doing that and you start seeing most people saying, hell, I can get a quality education at my state university than I can at this other university. If you start seeing people defect these universities enough, you're going to start seeing either some mergers and acquisitions going on in the education institution, in the education field. You're going to start seeing some closing and consolidations, or you're going to start seeing people start saying, okay, these universities start saying, okay, well, my bad, psych, we was just playing, we'll lower our tuitions. They'll start lowering tuitions because the market will demand that they do so. But I'm not all for just writing off people's bills. You took out the loan, you chose to assume the loan, pay it. Now, the one stipulation that I will say is this. The only stipulation that I'll go for and that I'm willing to entertain, but you have to work out the detail, is for public service, particularly teachers. Teachers get higher education degrees because they're performing they have to have those particular certifications or accreditations, from those institutions. And they're providing a public service by educating our future leaders, being the first being the first points of contact in the education process before they get to higher educations that's in universities. So I'm willing to say, hey, look, for teachers, they need more. And I'm going to do a whole series on teachers and why I think teachers are way more important than these military people we keep walking around thanking for our service. I don't know why we keep thanking them for service for anything. And I'll say that up front without being scared to say it. We need to thank these teachers. And also, when I mentioned public service, you want to forgive somebody's debt, forgive public service debt. If there's a trash man out there and has a education, forgive some people who are in public service doing a public service. Those are the people whose debts need to be forgiven. If you're going out and just working in private industry, why should we forgive your debt? You're not providing a public service to anyone. You're being self-serving. So that's my ramblings on student loan forgiveness. If you have any comments or feedback, please do so. If you have questions, please send me some questions. Email me or text me some questions. Put them in the comments, questions, so I can answer them, do follow-up videos, because I love talking, I love debating. If you want to talk and debate me, I would love to hear it. So again, like and subscribe as well. This is the Political Brown Kid. Enjoy your day.